Welcome back, everybody. It's the Innovative Agency. Sharon Torek here with you again. Very excited to have another, I think it's going to be thought-provoking conversation with all of you. We have never addressed this topic on the show so far. We've certainly had guests on to talk about, the collaboration between sales and marketing. And I think we'll touch on that maybe a little bit today in today's conversation. We've had a lot of conversations about being clear and communicating goals, expectations, metrics with your brand clients before you get started. But today, I think the conversation is going to be very engaging because today's guest, Josh Ramsey. Thank you, Josh, for joining us today. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Josh is an agency founder like all of you and has had a really interesting background prior to founding his agency. And we're not going to really talk too much about that, except I want you to understand his pathway so that you can understand his perspective a little bit. But what I do want to dig into is Josh's experience in conceptualizing his fractional CMO business. Fractional C-suite services are very popular right now. My firm consumes some of them for some of the disciplines that you need to run a business. Many of yours may as well. But what are they really? And what should they be? And Josh is walking this path. And so I'm really looking forward to digging into how you've developed your point of view and how you feel agencies can succeed or what they need to know about the CMO role and a fractional CMO approach. So first of all, welcome. Thanks for being here again. Let's talk a little bit about your path. You were, and we don't see this every day in the agency world, but you were a sales guy who you told me we were having a conversation before we hit record. You admitted you were a sales guy who was successful at sales who didn't really know a lot about marketing, right?
100%. I mean, I go back, I didn't even share this with you before. I go back to the Cutco days. So some
Oh,
people might remember that, the door knocking in the mid 90s,
my.
hey, do you want to buy a knife set? So that goes way back. But yeah, so I mean, in short, Sherry, yeah, you nailed it. I mean, I sold every type of media you could imagine, everything, not just knives, but radio, television, transit advertising, billboards, print. I worked for a company most people know, Belo. So I worked at different segments inside Belo, CBS, Clear Channel, and so forth. So I did a lot, but it was I call it the churn and burn, where it was as fast as I could sell them, the fast they rolled out the back end, and there was a frustration of me never understanding why. Why can't I retain it? Because people would say, "I like you, I'm just not going to re-up," and they weren't getting the ROI. So, that was the original, and then I moved into the agency world, and man, life changed when I started to realize, other differences in the agency side of, okay, this is how you retain a client. You put them in different categories. But that's when I think the first light bulb went off in understanding the difference of marketing that I talk about now, which is your strategic message and your tactical placement. Because my churn and burn days were tactical placement, just get the impressions.
Right.
But the maturation of what Zig said, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Right.
And I've maturated that in my own mind to the third level, which is what is the perception of your audience?
Okay.
So
was that the impetus then? So you worked in the agency world and then you eventually went on to found your own digital agency, correct? After that, after working for another person's agency.
right.
And then how did you get to the inflection point of wanting to launch off of or adjacent to your agency, which you still own? I mean, right? It's still an operating digital
Yes.
agency.
Yes.
How did you decide to turn this sort of insight that you had that maybe agencies weren't really understanding that difference between strategy and tactics? Which, by the way, this is the third conversation this week I've had about this topic. Not CMOs, but about
Yeah.
strategy versus tactics
Yeah.
with an agency owner this week. How did you decide to mature that into developing an actual CMO offering on a fractional basis yourself? What was the drive behind that?
So, I mean, the shortest version is that I basically retired. I was able to what I call fire retire, where I could sit back and allow the company to operate, and I didn't have to be in the integral day-to-day part. And as I was able to do that, I looked at the market as a whole and tried to figure out, what am I really good at? What is my next career path before the age of 40? And as I was evaluating that, I was doing some research, looking at things, and just kind of taking a big step back. And I realized there was a huge gap in the market in 2018, 2019 that started to fill now, but in the fractional CMO world, the chief marketing officer world, there just was, you do a Google search and there was one or two, and Cheap Outsiders is probably the most known company. And that was really it. And they didn't even really have anything.
Mhm.
So I just said, I've got all this experience. I've done it. I've been there. I've had my own agency, still have it. But I work a lot with other agencies because I have some clients that say, hey, we want you involved, but we want to work with another agency. But
Mhm.
that was really it. I think that explains it, because that's what it was. Is just I sat back, looked at it, and said, what am I good at? What is my unique selling position? And how can I make that effective for my growth, for my career in the next phase of where I want to be, and where I want to go? And
Mm.
that's what I saw. So I jumped on it, and yeah, just been running with it ever since.
So I know you have a well-earned and specific point of view about how agencies collaborate with CMOs and what some of the disconnects or missed opportunities are in those relationships. We were talking briefly about that as well before our recording today. And so, where do you think some of the major missteps occur between agency and brand in terms of um, meeting the needs of the CMO, who, by the way, is a very beleaguered person, whether he or she is new or has been there for a bit. They're probably not going to stay there for long if they're an in-house CMO. The tenure is not getting any longer; it's just getting shorter at most brands. So, um, what's your point of view about the misses that agencies should be aware of and how they could do better there?
So what I deal with on a day to day, I think kind of understanding that part, I think gives a new paradigm shift for business owners that are agency owners. And
Mhm.
that paradigm is, when I walk in, I'm going to call it 80+% of the time when I walk in, the first thing that I ask the business owner or the agency, in some type of conversations that happen pretty quick on the front end, is what have been the goals when the agency started, and have they been accomplished?
Mm,
That's it. And I will tell you that it is probably 90% of the time, 90% of the time, that has never been clearly defined. And when people go, 90, really? Yes. In my experience, 90% of the time, if I'm walking in and talking to an ad agency, I will simply ask them that one question. What was your goal that you gave to the business owner that you were accomplished, and what was the time period you were going to do it? And then what was that result? Just
mhm,
pure and simple. They don't have it. It's not there. What they jump into is, oh, well, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this. And I'm like, okay, I understand what you've done. That I'm not going to question. You've worked on things. The client's
mhm,
seen it, I see it, you see it, but that's not really the question. And what I found is that one of the top disconnects of why agencies get such a bad rap, or lose their job with that company so quickly, is that the business owner comes in with this unrealistic level of expectation from an ad agency. They expect that this agency is going to start making their phone ring like crazy day 3 of signing that agreement.
mhm,
The agency, what my belief is, and again, you have to kind of go off of opinion, and opinion is based off of my experience, right? So I'm
mhm.
not always right. I'm very open to that.
Yeah, none of us are.
But with that said, my experience that I've seen, and I have put into place as well on my agency side that my leaders in my agency execute now is, this is what we're going to do, this is the time frame, and here's our expectation. Therefore, when the business owner comes in and goes, I expect this, there's a clear conversation of expectations matching, their demand. And when that's done, I mean, I shared with you, Sharon, just some of the very brevity parts, but I have two very unique clients that have just recently started working with me, and they're almost identical, working with two very established, very well-known agencies, but both agencies have made the same mistakes in not setting it up. Now, as they've both moved forward with their own vision of what SEO is, and I'm just going to stay in SEO for just a minute, but as they both given visions, the visions are very different. One is very much what we'll call on page, and the other is very much off page. So just, again, simplifying some terms that most of your agency owners are going to understand.
Yeah.
One does one on, the other one does off. I didn't walk in and disagree with either one. I have my own opinion on them, but I didn't disagree. And I didn't disagree that they had made strides to get better, but they still didn't come in with that baseline. So that expectation was totally missed. And I think that kind of comes back to training of the people. So that's just, I think I answered your question there.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I wonder, don't you think it also is an element of bravery that agencies have to have up front by forcing their clients to articulate exactly what success looks like in the relationship? I feel like, I mean, we work with hundreds of agencies. I talk with a lot of agency owners, and I feel like, and I'd love your point of view on this. I feel like the agency is, and I think this is a fear-based way of handling the start of the relationship. They're afraid to pin the brand down before the work starts because they want the work to start. They want the retainer to start. They want to keep their people busy. They want to keep the lights on. I feel like it is a fear-based decision to not actually force the client to be articulate about what business goal do you want us to help you move the needle on. And then before you know it, the business goal has either changed and the brand hasn't told the agency, or the agency is focused on the tactics, as you just pointed out. And there's stuff happening. There's certainly, deliverables being delivered, but no action on the business goal because they didn't force the client to either articulate it or say, you know what, we can't help you because you don't know what you want.
Yeah, this is a conversation we could have for hours and days and days.
Yeah.
I love the direction. And when I say we could have the conversation for hours, I would love to have that conversation with a group of people and be invited to that call, Sharon. So if we wanted to do something, and I would love to be at the round table and just listen.
Yeah.
But here's my quick response for sake of time for
Yeah.
our time together today. My quick response is so many levels, but the first one that popped into my head as I was processing everything that you said, the first thing that popped in my head is I find generality speaking, there's two types of agencies that operate. I think that there's your hybrid. I think that there's uniqueness, there's boutique. I don't dismiss any of that. I'm going to lump most people into two buckets. One bucket is what I call the yes man, and the other one is the no man. So women respected, okay? But when we say like the yes man, old term, an old school guy here, the yes person is the focus of, I'm going to give you what you want, no problem. The no person is what I would classify as, let me lead you, let me guide you. I think they're both good. And I think you have to have both, because some business owners, CEOs, want the yes man to say, I know what's best. I just want you to go do it. So don't ask, just go execute. That's good for the yes person. For the no person, they're a little bit more of, hey, let me guide you, let me show you. But I think in either element, what I would come back to, Sharon, that we were talking about in the beginning was set the plan. Because then if a client comes in and they want to let you go, at least at minimum, you feel good about your ethics, morals, values, and your work, that you did a good job. So at the end of the day, even if you are running what I might consider in a negative term, a churn and burn outfit, and they're out there, and most of us are not, but they're out there. And what happens is the good group gets put into the bad group phase, right? So for the 99% of people that are here listening to and working with you, Sharon, they're great. But that 1% sometimes, that one sour grape, turns everything bad. That's where I just think setting the expectation at the end of the day really has to matter. And then working with that, and then you become agile within it, shift. But let me give you one quick story, and I'm gonna kick it back over to you. In the real life, I talked about those two companies. The business owner admitted to the agency with me on the first phone call that he had a very high expectation and that they weren't meeting it. But he said, I don't expect you to meet it because my expectation is very high, but I want you to come closer than you're getting. So I asked the agency, okay, I'm almost like a counselor at this point, where I asked the agency, hey, I see what you're doing and I see some really good things. Here are my questions as to why these things weren't done. Was it because he redirected you because you don't agree with why these things weren't done? You don't feel like they're practical? And they basically came back and said, he keeps giving us different direction. And I said, okay. So I looked at the business owner and I said, here's the problem. They're doing great on all of this. Sure, they might be able to improve over here, in my opinion. But if you keep re-guiding them and they're giving you the plan, and he goes, wait, I never got a plan. Minds explode in the room of, wait a second, no one has laid out the plan. We're just every 2 weeks jumping on a call and firing shots in the air and start talking about the weather rather than what needs to happen. So 3 months pass and the business owner now is up to angry because he looks back and he goes, I don't care that we talked about the weather the last 3 months. I want results done. And that's where I think that leadership has to come in. And again, when we circle this back, Sharon, to the very beginning of why we jumped on this call together, that's where I like to step in as a CMO to say, what is our vision? What are the results we're looking for? And at least if we miss them, we know why we missed them. We know how to go back and get better as a company and share that success of we grew. Like 21 years of doing something doesn't really give you anything other than you saw many failures and you made better on those failures the next time around.
Yeah, I think it's just an important conversation that for a lot of complex reasons, agencies avoid having with their clients up at the up front or at the check-in points because they maybe they don't want to hear the answers, or maybe they don't want the discomfort of holding the client accountable. And I'm sure there's a little bit of both of those things that go on. I don't know which is more prevalent than the other. What I do know is that it does lead to churn. It leads to a shorter tenure of the relationship between the agency and the client, from what I've seen. And it also has sort of contributed to this, reputation issue that agencies unfairly face, as they're all liars. They just want to sell us and throw a bunch of data at us that doesn't mean anything and move on to their next client. I don't believe that's true. I mean, not from what I've seen, and not from the agencies that we work with behind the scenes. They're very interested in helping the clients achieve their goals. So it isn't about that. But that's the reputation that they're dealing with. And so, which probably feeds into the fear they have about forcing the conversation. It's a flywheel. I
don't
also
know if
want
this
to go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, I don't know if this would help anybody that hears this, but one thing that I've used often that I have found very successful in my conversations, especially starting off, is looking at the client and being very open and honest with them and saying, hey, I want to ask you a very real question. And my question is, do you want me to tell you what you need to hear or what you want to hear? Like, how do you, Mr. Prospect to me, Mrs. Prospect to me, how do you want our relationship to work? Like, do you want me to cushion it? and make it soft, or do you really want me to be raw? And most of the time they're going to be raw. Be like, okay, but when you say be hard, be raw, tell you the truth, how hard do you want me to be with it? Like
Yeah.
all the way? And then you get the real answer of where they want you and you figure out on that scale.
Yeah.
But I also want to say one other thing, because you kind of touched on this, but I want to dive in on this one other statement that I feel like is really important. I think you've said this in a roundabout way, so I'm going to say it in my words.
Mhm.
Be open to owning your mistake on the front end as soon as it happens. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be raw with every one of you right now. Sharon, you're the only one I'm talking to right now. I'm going to be raw with you. My team / I did not shut off an AdWords campaign when we needed to make a transition with a website. The
Mhm.
AdWords campaign ran for 2 months. I had to refund that money, but it was a mistake. We learned a lot through the data that happened for a lot of reasons, but I had to make the phone call to the business owner and say, hey, your card has been charged for this amount of money because we as a company, not really me, but it was me because I'm the owner, we didn't shut off AdWords when we were supposed to. It was the hardest thing, one of the hardest things, to just have to swallow that pill and own it. But you know what? We are now 3 months past that with that client, and that client is super happy. And I think part of it is that I showed my flaws and I'm willing to come to the client and not peacock in front of them, but instead take my licks and say, look, we screwed up. I'm going to do everything I can to make it right. And I think at the same sense, one other different direction, I don't have a good example of real life off the top of my head, is just simply saying, we went in the last 2 months, we went after this goal. We didn't hit it. Here's everything that we did to try to hit that goal, thinking it was going to work, but it didn't. I feel like when you have that type of conversation with a business owner, if the business owner looks at you and goes, thanks for sharing, yeah, that sucks, how are we going to shift it and do it better? If they do that, that's a client you want. If they
Yeah.
go, oh, I hate you, that's a client you don't. Let them go and find someone better.
Right.
But I don't know. Those just things just kind of popped into my head, Sharon, as you were talking. So sorry, I
Yeah.
kind of took us back on a tangent
That's
there.
okay. No, I mean, it's good perspective. So now that you've been through the experience of offering the fractional CMO services that you do, I know you have a point of view on agencies offering these types of services themselves. And you were candid with me that you think a lot of agencies are missing the mark. Let's
Yeah.
just put it that way, who try to venture into this area. So for the agency owners and leaders who are listening today, whose interest is piqued by the idea of offering fractional CMO on top of what they do or aside from what they do, what are the mistakes you want them to avoid if they decide to pursue this? And are the top maybe one or two things you think they need to know before they walk down this path?
I think the bottom line, just for me, comes from my ethics, morals, and values, which is just be honest about it. What I find and I hear and then I see is, if you looked up Josh Ramsey marketing just in a Google search, I am everywhere. If you just look up my name, Josh Ramsey, fractional CMO, you're going to find my website, JRCMO. On my site, I highlight specifically myself as the CMO. I have other CMO people that work with and for me, but I'm the main focus. What I'm seeing is agencies wanting to crawl into that space. I have no problem with the competition of it and having a different philosophy of what marketing can look like. I'm all for it. I'm not the best fit for everybody.
Yeah, there's
I,
room for different approaches for sure.
but I think being honest about what your approach is. So I teach a lot of conferences, and one of the many things that I teach is there's, again, I put things into generalities until you get down deeper. But in generality, you have the data CMO and you have the what I call the butterfly CMO. I would love to be the butterfly CMO, meaning I'm great with colors and vision and brand and all these other things. I'm more of the data CMO. I want to know where the numbers go and what the result was. And I want to talk with, again, what I departmentalize as the butterfly CMO of How can we make it more user friendly, a better experience, a better picture? Because I'm looking at the data. So those two, I think, work really well together. And I understand how that, as I called it, the butterfly works, but I'm more of the black and white, granular, these are the numbers. Being honest with that is really the only thing that I would encourage people, because as you, the way you lose, in my opinion, the way you lose businesses, you didn't sell them properly on the front end. So Sharon, you said, let's get the contract going. Let's get them into the retainer. Yes, yes, absolutely. Let's go. At the same time, let's not focus on the churn and burn. Let's focus on the build and grow. And the build and grow means when you get them into that retainer, you get them that contract, you know what they want. They know what you're going to give them. It's an equal measurement. And I think you get into the contract faster when that's met, when you
Right.
both are on the same page.
Right, yes, but that's true of any agency service. I guess what I'm wondering is, and I think what I'm taking from what you just said is that if you're going to have a CMO, fractional CMO offering as an agency, know what your functional excellence is, right? Don't pretend to understand digital and everything that falls under that envelope. Well, if what you really are is a creative or brand builder,
Right.
expert. And so know your biases and strengths, or the biases and strengths of the individuals who are going to serve in these roles to clients if you're going to launch this type of a service, right?
Yes.
That's what
And
I'm
then,
hearing.
yes, 100%. And then to build on that, one of the things that we also chatted about that I'll share here again is, along with that, when you offer yourself as a CMO, it's typically meant to be a CMO, not CMOs, right? It's a
Yeah, you're
fractional
you are the
CMO.
client's voice.
You
And
are that one person and you
yeah,
are in charge. So make sure whoever, if you have an agency and you're going to offer that, there's ways to do it. You can be creative, but I would just recommend you consider finding that one voice, that one person that you go, this is our lead. I oftentimes, agencies have hired me many times to come in and help them restructure, strategize, change, or give a different opinion on what they're doing. And as I've done that, I always go in and say, who's your lead and how are they learning? And then if you take that person, you could then posture them. Business owners, you got to be a little bit careful because you don't want to put too many eggs in one of your strategist baskets, right? Where everyone buys them and not your system. So again, that's a whole nother conversation that you would have to have of, are they buying the CMO that you're posturing or the strategy? I do a bit of both. So if
mhm.
anyone ever looked up my brand and just be like, I wonder how he does it. I do a bit of both of. I have the strategy and the philosophy, but what I've done is put that. And if you look at me closely and you watch everything I do, I put a lot of my brand and my strategy and the philosophies in my agency side, and then I sell my conversation with people. So now
Mhm.
people are just buying my vision. That's my CMO. They're buying me as a person, my time as a person and a visionary. But then I go tell the agency, go execute on this.
Mhm.
And that's where that balance happens for me.
So, and then I have so many questions, but because our time together is limited, the last question I have for you is positioning the CMO practice. Do you have an opinion that it's best for agencies to set that up, prop that up alongside the agency versus building it as a silo within the agency? That seems to be what you've done. Is that what you think is the best way to organize it?
You know, I'm gonna say that I would consider that and talk about it being a unique selling position, meaning what is your narrative? Whoever's listening to this, I'm talking directly to that person. What
Mhm.
is your narrative? What is your experience? What makes you unique to the market? And whatever makes you unique to the market, that's what you want to position yourself. So, Sharon, it's a great question, but the answer could be a lot of different variations. For me, what happened in my natural maturization was that I grew my agency to the point of I didn't have to be in the day to day because I built it operationally and foundationally on principles and segments of business that we were going to follow. So when anyone ever signs an agreement with my agency, they know immediately what they're getting. There are nuances because every business is unique, but the core competency is there. That's what they buy on that side. The uniqueness is what I bring on the CMO side, which is once you have a website, what other revenue streams are you using to drive business in to your door? And how do you position that website? That's me, but I think some people won't have the agency side. So if that person doesn't have an agency side, go find good partners, because I am always looking for good partners. So Sharon, I don't want to get overwhelmed if you have a bunch of people that like what you and I are talking about, but I'm always looking for good agencies to put on
Yep.
my list to say, hey, your boutique at this, you're good at this, you're good at this. Awesome. Because the way I keep a client is they're making money. How
Right.
do I make them money? I find a good agency and say, hey, execute on these things so that we're all good.
Right. So it sounds to me like what you're saying is if an agency wants to embark on this practice of splitting off a CMO specialty or that it should be positioned separately from the agency, day-to-day work.
And again, we go by opinion. And in my opinion, yes,
Yeah.
because a
That's what I'm
CMO
asking
is a
for.
singular position. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, CMO is a singular position. You
Yeah.
don't put a junior project manager into a senior strategist. If you hire a junior, they're a junior for a reason. They're green, they're young, they haven't done it.
Yeah.
So if you have a senior, you do it. Or if you're a business owner, you're already an agency owner and you are a veteran and you are seasoned, you become the CMO. String that off and become the CMO and
Got it.
offer that, right? Yes, that is my opinion, but I
Yeah.
believe it to be true because that's what I've done and I've seen it work.
Got it. No, I get that. I respect that. All right. So if agencies want to learn more, Josh, about the way you set up your CMO practice, or if they want to talk with you about being resources to it, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, it's honestly to go to my website, jrcmo.com. So it stands for Josh Ramsey, Chief Marketing Officer.com. And or just Google, Josh Ramsey marketing, and you'll find me really easy.
All right.
But yeah, when they go there, I would just say, look at the different offerings. But if you do my contact us form, just be unique a little bit because I get a lot of spam. So if you're wanting to connect, be a
Yeah.
little more unique than, hey, we do this. Say something like, I heard you on Sharon's podcast. And then I go, oh, okay, yeah, awesome.
Yep.
That's a big difference there.
All right. Yeah. Mention the podcast. I love that.
That's it. That's it.
Well, Josh Ramsey, thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your journey and also some tips about the fractional CMO experience and how you've evolved it and what agencies need to be thinking about. I really appreciate it. It's a great conversation. And I appreciate all of you for being here today. It was a really good discussion. I hope you learned a lot, and we will see you on the next episode. And until then, stay well, everybody.